word design can be a little funny at times. It could have different interpretations depending on the scenario. When you hear the phrase, "That's a great design," would you know exactly what your interlocutor meant by that? It could mean aesthetics, functions, or even both. To give a much deeper meaning to the word design, let's put it this way. Design is about giving meaning to something. It is all about creating an everlasting experience. Design is something more than aesthetics, and most certainly it has many notches above the planning function. That is exactly why the concept of design transcends a single discipline. It can be applied to web, mobile, software, fashion, industrial, interior, and everything else. In the world where anything could be built, it is a matter of understanding whether it really should be built. That is design. Design is something that elevates the lives and lifestyle of people. Design changes what is into what ought to be. Design is the way to build a better and beautiful world. However, what we need to keep in mind is the fact that everything is designed, but few things are designed well. Design is so simple, and that's what makes it so complicated.
Icing modeling is the concept of using different mediums of edible icing to create 3D characters, shapes, objects, and of course flowers, which is what everybody likes to learn. The three types of fondants of three types of icings that many bakers use is fondant, gum paste, and modeling chocolate. Now, fondant is the icing that is basically what you see in a structure. That is what is used to cover the entirety of the cake that you are making, and it gives a beautiful finish to whatever you're creating. Gum paste is used to make things like flowers and the hardened structures that go inside of a fondant figure, or even square or hard shapes that you would require to make for your cake. Modeling chocolate is, I would say, my favorite. It is a medium of using basically actual chocolate that uses something called liquid glucose to harden it, right? And it can be used to make figures, faces, shapes. It's beautiful. It can be carved in the manner that you want. It has a beautiful finish once it's done. A lot of the very famous cake decorators use modeling chocolate as their base for things like for 3D structures. Baking and cake decorating was not something I honestly thought of doing for the rest of my life. But I had studied to be a pilot, and I envisioned my life traveling the world, but I guess God had a different plan for me. Having recently left my job at the time, this was 7 years ago when I started my business, I had a lot of idle time on my hands, and I used to watch all these cake shows on TV. And it used to inspire me and intrigue me as to how people can create these amazing things out of icing, which is when I decided, why not give it a shot? I had always been a rather creative person. I used to love to paint and draw as a child. So I figured doing something like this was an avenue that maybe I might excel at. My husband went out and bought me my first set of modeling tools and told me that the sky was the limit. So I guess it was. I did my daughter's first birthday cake, and it kind of took everybody by storm because they never expected me to have a person who's never ever done any sort of baking to have created something like that. Was quite out of the norm for me, and that was when I decided I loved decorating cake. Cake decorating initially started in the 17th century. People believed that only the royalty deserved extravagant cake, so it was only given to the kings and queens. But obviously, in the times that followed, people have changed their ideas and values of what a cake should be, and everybody wants cake. Everybody. I mean, when it comes to a birthday, to a wedding, to a child's christening, to naming day ceremonies, people want extravagance. They want luxury now. It's gone beyond the norm of what people used to think that cake was just covered in icing, maybe with some flowers or buttercream icing, but that's it. So I will be showing you how to make a mold face out of a piece of fondant. I have here with me a red roll fondant, which I have already colored up in the flesh color, and I have this modeling tool with me. This is always my trusty tool. I pretty much don't use anything else. This is what I use to mold all my faces. So you take your piece of fondant, Cake decorating in the last decade, I would say, has evolved to a point that people are really pushing the limits or boundaries of what a normal cake is like. Cake makers around the world are doing things that are gravity defying, using sugar glass, blown sugar, to create things that are out of the norm, out of the box. It's really fascinating and awe-inspiring to see the kind of things that people come up with, using edible mediums to create magnificent structures, massive cake that people wouldn't even believe is something that is made out of actual edible icing. When clients come to me with regards to a cake order, I have 4 things that I usually look into, which is technicality, difficulty, design, and execution. Technicality is, I like to make a structure, or what I specialize in mainly is figure modeling. So most of the time they come to me because they want me to create something that looks like them for either a wedding cake or a birthday cake. So I always sit them down and I ask them detailed descriptions about themselves, what they like, their hobbies, the things they like to do. And using those ideas, I create something very unique just for them. I do not like to repeat a particular structure that I do, because I believe that every person deserves something just for themselves. Difficulty is I assess how I will be making the structure or the figure, how big it will be, what kind of elements that I will have to use. Then I will tell them that I will sketch out what I have in my head, my ideas for the cake that I'm going to make for them. And I sit down and I research if it's a theme, if it's something to do with the everyday life. I research it and then I sketch it out, the idea that I have in my head. Sometimes I do a lot of sketches. So I pick the one that what I feel is something that is good for them, and then I send it across to my client, and then they tell me that this is what they like. Then I go about the execution on what parts of it I believe would be cake. Honestly, I do not like to use things like regiform or other sort of structures. I like to build everything completely out of cake. Which is the challenging part, but that is what I like to do. So if it's a gravity defying cake, I would see the basic bone structure of the cake has to be solid. Otherwise, everything that you're going to create will fall apart. So I've covered the bottom of this cake with a green colored fondant because I want to give it a very realistic sort of grass look. So to achieve that look, what I'm using is, you get these little scrubbers at home, right? So this is what I generally use. So I keep just applying pressure and to give it a bit of a texture like that. For your airbrush colors, please always use alcohol with a gel color rather than a water-based color like what you get in the market, because what happens is you'll have a lot of trouble with it. It generally tends to stick in your airbrush gun and it becomes a problem for you later, and it does not spray as well either. Always when you're coloring eyes, it's a simple detail, just put a little black outline on the eye because it accentuates it better and it gives it a more realistic look. decorating and sugar modeling has evolved so much in the past few decades that people around the world, I mean in most of the famous circles, consider it an art. The kind of art that you would actually keep in a museum if you really look at it. The beauty of it though is the fact that you can actually eat it. That is the most magnificent thing about it. Most of the greatest cake shows in the world have people that come from all walks of life that used to make things, say, out of clay or wood or even paper. They use their hands at sugar modeling and they make beautiful things. Sugar modeling for me personally is a way of expressing my creativity, and it brings me great self-satisfaction and pride to think that something I have created with my own two hands brings such pleasure to those who see it. That is what all designers want, isn't it? To be applauded for their creativity and recognized for their design. Don't think that sugar modeling as an art is only for those with a creative flair. It's not. Anybody can learn. If you have the determination to step out of your comfort zone and learn something new, trust me, this is a profession that will bring you gratification for yourself and for those around you in more ways than you can imagine. Sugar modeling and sugar art, personally for me, is a way of expressing myself, my inner creativity. It is how you would use your imagination and your wealth of knowledge in what you have learned to create something that you can actually express yourself in. It brings me immense satisfaction and pride to think that something I have created with my own two hands brings pleasure to those who see it. That is what all designers want, isn't it? To be applauded and recognized for the work they have done. Don't think that sugar modeling is only for those with a creative flair. Any sort of designing. If you have the determination to learn, to step out of your comfort zone and do something different, trust me, it is something that will bring you great gratification as a profession and as a person that you would like to see yourself in years to come. Sugar modeling will only get bigger and better. Don't think it's going to fade out. People will always want to eat cake.